Warning. What you are about to watch is a true story. The following program contains content that some viewers may find disturbing. Viewer discretion is strongly advised.
Cold case has possibly been cracked with the help of DNA evidence. A man is now facing charges in Alabama for killing two teenage girls nearly 20 years ago. And Amy is here with how the police tracked him down. Good morning, Amy.
All right, good morning to you, Michael. Yes, DNA registries are the newest tool for investigators, helping police nab suspects in several high-profile cases, cold cases. Most notably, the Golden State serial killings. Well, now it could finally help bring closure for two Alabama families.
Alabama, 1999. Cold case finally solved. Arrest shocks community. And when I say shocked, I mean this town could not breathe. Two 17-year-old girls, best friends, found shot to death in the trunk of a car on a birthday night in the summer of 1999. The killer's DNA was sitting in an evidence locker the whole time, 20 years, and it matched no one. But here's the part nobody saw coming. When the name finally surfaced, it wasn't a drifter. It wasn't a stranger passing through. Every murder case has a clock, and this clock starts ticking at exactly 10 p.m., July 31st, 1999. Dothan, Alabama, a city of about 60,000, tucked into the Wiregrass region, down where Alabama, Florida, and Georgia all meet. Thick summer heat, long flat roads, windows down kind of nights. The kind of town where nobody locked their doors. And to understand this case, you have to understand that summer. America was riding high in 1999. The economy was booming. The future felt wide open. Kids cruised the long, flat roads of Houston County late into the night. Backyard cookouts. Radios playing coast to coast. Real danger? That was something that happened on the news. In some other place. Nobody in Dothan believed it could live next door. That belief is about to cost this town everything. Now, pay close attention to every minute of this next hour, because 24 years from this night, a jury will measure a man's story against this exact timeline. Every stop, every phone call, every witness, it all matters. 10 p.m., a black Mazda 929 pulls out of Dothan. Behind the wheel, Jennifer Beasley. Everyone called her JB. It was her car. And it was her night. She turned 17 that very day. Honor student. Junior Honor Society. Cheerleader. The kid parents brag about. Her mother called her a beautiful gift. And she meant it literally. In the passenger seat, Tracy Hollett. JB's best friend since middle school. Inseparable. You saw one, you saw the other. The plan was simple. An outdoor birthday party in Headland, 10 miles north of Dothan. 10 miles. A drive they'd done versions of 100 times. Music, friends, a birthday under the stars. But somewhere on those dark county roads, something went wrong. Not danger, not yet, just a wrong turn. And here's the thing about a wrong turn at night. On roads you don't know. By the time you realize it, you're already somewhere you've never been. The girls never made it to Headland. Instead, the Mazda ended up in Ozark, more than 20 miles northwest of Dothan. The complete opposite direction. Let that sink in for a second. They weren't a little off course. They were lost, in the dark, in a town they didn't know, on roads that all looked the same. Two teenagers, no GPS, no cell phones. This is 1999. When you got lost back then, you found a gas station, and you asked a human being, which is exactly what they did. 11:30 p.m., the Big Little Convenience Store, a Chevron station on East Broad Street in Ozark. One problem, the store closed at 11, lights off, doors locked. But the girls caught a break. A local woman named Marilyn Merritt had stopped by with her daughter, just picking up a couple of sodas. And what Marilyn saw in that parking lot would become sworn trial testimony 24 years later. So listen carefully. Because this is evidence. The girls got out and walked over. Calm. Polite. They asked one question. How do we get back to Highway 231 so we can get home to Dothan? That's it. That was the mission. Get home. Marilyn gave them clear, simple directions, and she noticed things, small things. The kind of details most people forget by morning. JB's car was spotless. The girls were clean, composed, completely at ease. No fear in their eyes, no stress in their voices, no sign of trouble anywhere. Just two kids, a little embarrassed about being lost, and worried about getting home late. Remember every word of that description, because one day, a man will stand in a courtroom and tell a very different story about this night. A story about a planned meeting, a story about intent, and Marilyn Merritt's memory will be waiting for him. An ordinary woman, buying sodas with her daughter, who happened to look closely at exactly the right moment. Sometimes the most important witness in a murder case doesn't even know she's a witness yet. 11:35 p.m. 5 minutes later, Tracy walks to the payphone on the corner of the store. She dials home. Her mother, Carol Roberts, picks up, and the voice on the line sounds completely normal. Tracy explains it. "We got lost. We have directions now. We're on our way." Then she says the last words her mother will ever hear from her. "Mom, I love you. Be home soon." She hangs up the phone. "Now, before that Mazda leaves the parking lot, I need you to look at one more thing. Because the security camera inside the Big Little store was running that whole time, and it caught something. Grainy footage. Blurry. Easy to miss. A small white pickup truck, parked at the gas pump. At the exact moment Tracy was standing at that payphone. Here's what makes that truck a problem. No fuel was purchased. Not a single transaction logged at that pump. Nobody saw the driver. Nobody recognized the vehicle. Nobody could read the plate. A truck that bought nothing. Parked at a gas station. At 11:35 at night. Just sitting there. Was it nothing? A coincidence? Someone using the lot as a shortcut? Or was someone in that truck, watching two lost girls ask for directions? Investigators would chase that question for 2 decades. Hold on to that truck. We are coming back to it. Marilyn Merritt finished her stop and watched the girls go. The black Mazda pulled out of the lot. It turned right toward the main road. Exactly the way she told them. Headlights sweeping across the dark. 2 best friends inside. 20 minutes from home. She had no way of knowing she'd just become the last witness, the last person to ever speak to J.B. Beasley and Tracy Hollett, because the car turned right, exactly as directed, and drove into a 20-year silence, real quick, before that silence begins. This channel exists for exactly these cases, the ones that sat cold for decades, the ones everyone said would never be solved. And this case? It gets cracked by a single cotton swab, handed over by the one person who should have never agreed to give it. If you want to see how one swab ends a 20-year lie, hit subscribe right now, because the next 10 minutes are why you clicked. A parked car doesn't look like a crime scene. That's the problem. It looks like an errand, a breakdown, somebody visiting a friend. And that mistake, that ordinary human assumption, is about to cost this investigation 6 hours. August 1st, 1999, the morning after. In 2 separate homes in Dothan, 2 mothers had been awake all night. No call, no knock on the door, no headlights in the driveway. By morning, both families had reached the same conclusion. Something was wrong. They called the police. And that very same morning, about 30 miles away, an answer was already sitting in plain sight. Herring Avenue, a quiet residential street in Ozark, less than 1 mile from the payphone Tracy had used the night before. Parked on the side of the road, a black Mazda 929. Dothan plates. JB's car. Ozark police rolled out around 8 a.m. to take a look. And at first glance, there was nothing. No damage. No dents. No broken glass. No skid marks on the road. No sign the car was chased. No sign it was forced to stop. Just a car, left on a street. But police work lives in the details. So let's go through this scene the way investigators did. 1 point at a time. Point 1. The exterior. The Mazda was caked in mud. Remember, Marilyn Merritt described that car as spotless. Just hours earlier, somewhere between the gas station and Herring Avenue, this car went somewhere dirty. Point 2. The gas tank. Nearly empty. The girls were 20 minutes from home, with directions in hand. That tank says the car kept driving, long after it should have stopped. Point 3. The driver's window. Cracked open, a few inches. Think about when you roll a window down a few inches at night. When someone walks up to your car and you don't want to open the door. Point 4. The doors. Unlocked. Point 5. The dashboard. JB's driver's license. Sitting right there, in plain view. Point 6. And this one changes the entire direction of the case. Both girls' wallets were still inside. Cash, untouched. Jewelry, untouched. Credit cards, untouched. Whoever was involved in this walked away from money. Every dollar, every card, left behind. Only one item was missing from that car. JB's keychain, a small chain of black and white blocks, spelling out 3 words. Hard to get. Now comes the part of this case that is genuinely difficult to talk about. Not because it's graphic, because of how preventable it was. The car had Dothan plates, so Ozark police contacted Dothan. A Dothan investigator drove out to handle the tow, and from 8 o'clock that morning, officers stood around that vehicle, looking at the mud, the license, the wallets, and for 6 hours, nobody opened the trunk. There was no key, and apparently, no urgency. It wasn't until almost 2 p.m., while waiting on the tow truck, that the investigator noticed something. A release lever, inside the car. The trunk could be popped without a key. It had been openable the entire time. He pulled the lever. J.B. Beasley and Tracy Hollett were inside. I'm going to keep this clinical, because facts serve these girls better than shock value. Both girls had died from gunshot wounds, a 9mm. Both were fully clothed. And resting inside that trunk, investigators found a single 9mm shell casing. Inside the car itself, no signs of a struggle. No chaos, no damage. Which raised a question the evidence was about to answer. If nothing happened inside this car, then where did it happen? Look at what the girl's clothing was telling investigators. Tracy had scratches on her arm. Briars, thorny plant burrs, stuck to her pants. Her shoes were brand new, bought just 1 week before, caked in mud, and both girls, both of them, had pant legs soaked to the knee. Wet grass, damp ground, thick brush. There is nothing like that on Herring Avenue. It's a residential street, pavement, yards, houses. Which means the evidence only reads one way. At some point that night, both girls walked through wet, overgrown terrain. Somewhere dark, somewhere off the road, somewhere else. And that conclusion cracked the whole scene open. Herring Avenue was not where this crime happened. Herring Avenue is just where the car was left. The girls were taken to a second location. That's where everything happened. Then the car, mud-caked, tank nearly empty, was driven back into town, parked on a quiet street, and abandoned. And understand what a second location means for an investigation. It means the actual crime scene is out there, unknown, unsecured. Somewhere in the fields and back roads of Dale County. No perimeter, no forensic sweep, no tire impressions collected. Whatever evidence that ground was holding, footprints, shell casings, fibers, it was sitting exposed. In Alabama summer heat. Under Alabama summer rain. Every day it stayed unfound. It degraded a little more. Investigators searched. They never located it. To this day, the exact spot where JB and Tracy were taken has never been publicly identified. The killer chose that location. And he chose well. So investigators started ruling things out. Robbery? Gone. Immediately. You don't leave cash, cards, and jewelry behind in a robbery. Road rage, nothing supported it. No damage. No witnesses to any confrontation. Random carjacking, carjackers take the car. The car is the one thing left behind. Every ordinary explanation collapsed. This was something else. And 2 months later, the Alabama State Crime Lab confirmed exactly what? 2 findings, both critical. Finding 1. Biological evidence, recovered from JB. The person responsible had left DNA behind. A complete genetic profile. Finding 2. A palm print, lifted from the inside of the trunk lid. Not from the handle, not from the outside, the inside. The place a hand presses when someone closes that trunk over what's in it. And that print matched no one on file. The district attorney looked at the full picture and said it plainly. This was a sexual crime, or it came out of one. And that conclusion transformed the entire investigation. Because it meant this case now had a single thread running through it. Not witnesses. Witnesses forget. Not the truck on the camera. Nobody could trace it. The DNA. A complete genetic fingerprint. Preserved. Catalogued. Sitting in a lab. Belonging to one man. The math was brutally simple. Find the man who left that DNA, and you find the killer. The theory was perfect. The search would take 20 years. And the first break in this case would be a lie. Pressure. Every unsolved murder creates it. And in a small town, pressure has nowhere to go. 2 17-year-olds were gone. The whole Wiregrass region felt it. Neighbors started looking at each other differently. People drove past strangers, and the thought crept in. Could it have been you? A reward fund started growing. Fast. The families wanted answers. The public wanted an arrest. The press wanted it yesterday. And all of that pressure was pointed directly at the police. Remember that reward fund, because it's about to poison this entire case. September 1st, 1999. Exactly 1 month after the discovery. A man walks into the Ozark police station. Voluntarily. Nobody called him in. Nobody was looking at him. He just showed up and said he knew something. His name was Johnny Barentine, 28 years old, a part-time mechanic. And here's the detail that made investigators sit up. He lived less than a mile from Herring Avenue. They put him in an interrogation room, recorder running. The interview lasted 4 hours. And across those 4 hours, Johnny Barentine told his story 6 different ways. Version 1. He saw a black truck speeding away from the Herring Avenue area. Version 2. Now the story grows. He gave a ride that night to a stranger covered in tattoos. And then the final version, the one that got everyone's attention. Barentine claimed the tattooed man got into the girl's car, at the store. Ordered Barentine to follow them. They all drove to Herring Avenue. The man pulled the girls out. Barentine heard gunshots. Then the man climbed back in, and Barentine drove him home. Police arrested him on the spot. The press ran with it. Hard. And the whole community finally exhaled. They thought it was over. They thought the killer was in custody. Now, watch how fast this falls apart. Crack number 1. Across all 6 versions of his story, 4 hours of tape, Barentine never once mentioned anything sexual. And the crime lab had already confirmed, this was a sexual crime. If you were truly there, that is not a detail you leave out. 6 times in a row. Crack number 2. The tattooed neighbor Barentine pointed to. Investigators checked him. He had a rock-solid alibi for the entire night. Crack number 3. The one that ends it. The DNA came back. It didn't match Barentine. It didn't match the neighbor either. Neither man left that evidence. Period. So Barentine went before a grand jury. And under oath, he finally told the truth. The whole story was invented. All 6 versions. He was never there. He saw nothing. He knew nothing. He made it up. For the reward money. The grand jury declined to indict him. He walked out free. And here's what that lie actually cost. Months of investigation. Burned. Manpower, resources, lab work. All spent chasing a fiction. While the real trail went cold in the background, the case wasn't back to square one. It was worse than square one. And there's a second cost. One that doesn't show up in reports. When a false story collapses in public, the community stops trusting the process. Tips slow down. Witnesses second-guess themselves. And detectives are forced to treat every new lead with double suspicion. One man's lie for reward money contaminated the well for everyone. But investigators kept grinding, because there were other names on the board. A man from Michigan. He'd been at a party near Herring Avenue that night. Couldn't account for 3 or 4 hours of his time. And he left town days after the girls were found. Investigators flew to Michigan. Not once. 3 separate times. They questioned him. They tested him. The DNA didn't match. Next, a man from Mississippi. He'd been staying in Ozark that summer and disappeared right after the murders. They tracked him down, brought him in, swabbed him. Didn't match. And that white pickup truck from the store camera? Detectives went frame by frame. The plate was unreadable. Nobody in town recognized the vehicle. The driver was never identified. Not that year. Not any year. Every lead hit a wall. Every cleared suspect just left another hole behind him, which left exactly one thing in that entire case file that still meant anything. The DNA. So let's talk about why that DNA sat useless for 20 years. Because this is the part most people don't understand about cold cases. The national system is called CODIS, the Combined DNA Index System. Investigators upload a crime scene profile and the system searches for a match. Here's the catch. CODIS only contains DNA from people already inside the justice system. People who've been arrested, charged, convicted. That's it. That's the pool. So the system worked exactly as designed. Ozark's profile was uploaded, and it searched. Year after year. Nothing. 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 Not because the technology was broken. Because the man who left that DNA had never been arrested, ever. No record, no charges, no fingerprint card, no swab on file. Think about what that means. A killer with a clean record is invisible to CODIS, by design. He doesn't have to hide. He doesn't have to run. He just has to keep being the kind of man nobody ever arrests. And somewhere in Alabama, that is exactly what this man was doing. Meanwhile, time did what time does. Dothan grew. New neighborhoods went up. A whole generation of kids was born, who only knew this case as a name the adults mentioned. The case itself became a fixture of Alabama true crime. Anniversary write-ups every few summers. Threads picked apart on forums. One of the most well-known cold cases in the state. But remembering a case and solving a case are two completely different things. And in two homes, time didn't move like that at all. Carol Roberts, Tracy's mother. Cheryl Bergen, JB's mother. For them, every July 31st came back around like a sentence. The birthday, the payphone, the last call. The case file stayed officially open at Ozark PD. But open is not the same as active. 20 years. 2 mothers. 1 question. Who killed my daughter? The answer was sitting in a lab the entire time, waiting for science to catch up. Then, in April 2018, a case 2,000 miles away in California changed the rules of the hunt forever. April 2018. Turn on any TV in America, and one face was everywhere. An elderly man, 72 years old, in handcuffs, in California. His name, Joseph James D'Angelo, the Golden State Killer. For 4 decades, he'd been a ghost. At least 13 murders. More than 50 sexual assaults. Across the 1970s and 80s. 40 years, and every conventional method had failed to find him. So how did they finally do it? Not a witness, not a tip, not a confession. A brand new technique. Used like this for the first time in American law enforcement history. Genetic genealogy. Okay, stay with me here. Because you need to understand exactly how this works. It's the key that unlocks everything in this case. You already know the old method. We covered it. Crime scene DNA goes into CODIS, and CODIS searches criminal profiles. If your suspect has no record, dead end, forever. Genetic genealogy flips the entire approach. Instead of criminal databases, you upload the crime scene profile to public ancestry databases. The same kind of sites millions of ordinary people use. People spitting in tubes at their kitchen tables, looking for long-lost cousins, building family trees. Now here's the genius of it. You are not looking for the killer in those databases. You're looking for his relatives. Because DNA doesn't just identify you. It identifies your bloodline. A third cousin who took an ancestry test shares a measurable slice of DNA with you. So do second cousins, great aunts, distant branches you've never met. The search comes back with partial matches. Relatives. Then genealogists go to work. Birth records, marriage records, obituaries, census data. They build the family trees outward from those cousins, then work inward, branch by branch, generation by generation, eliminating everyone who doesn't fit. Wrong age, wrong location, wrong side of the family, until the tree narrows to a single branch, and that branch narrows to a single name. Understand this clearly. The technique never hunts the killer. It hunts his family, and lets the family lead investigators straight to him. Your relatives don't have to know you. They don't have to suspect you. They just have to be curious about their own ancestry. That's it. That's the trap. Nobody with a guilty secret saw it coming, because the people exposing them were innocent. Now, back to Alabama. Because down in Ozark, one man was watching the D'Angelo case with a sharper kind of attention than most. The Ozark police chief, Chief Walker. He had a file in his own office he could never let go of. A DNA profile, sitting in a lab, untouched, since 1999. 2 17-year-old girls with no justice, and 2 mothers he personally knew, still waiting. Walker watched California pull a ghost out of thin air after 40 years, and he asked the obvious question, why not here? Why not my case? So he reached out to Parabon Nanolabs, a private DNA laboratory in Virginia, the same company central to identifying D'Angelo. His request was simple. Take my 1999 sample, run it through the public genealogy databases, find the families whose DNA partially matches, build the trees, narrow it down. Parabon took the case. The genealogists ran the analysis. The partial matches came back. The trees were built, branch by branch, exactly like California. And the results landed on Chief Walker's desk as a short list of Alabama family names. Picture that moment. A police chief, reading down a list. 20 years of dead ends behind him. And then, he stops cold. Because there's a name on that list he recognizes. Not from a case file, not from a wanted poster. From his own school days. A name he'd known most of his life. Coley McCraney, 45 years old. Born and raised right there, in the Dothan Ozark area. Never left, never ran. Never hid, a long-haul truck driver by trade, and a pastor, at a local church, standing in front of a congregation, every single Sunday, married to a woman named Jeanette, father of 2. And here is the fact that explains everything. 20 years of CODIS searches, chapter after chapter of this case. Coley McCraney had no criminal record, no arrests, no charges, not even a history with local police. Nothing. Ask anyone in town about him, and they'd have nothing bad to say. The kind of man you chat with over a fence. The kind of man a congregation looks up to. And that, right there, is why his DNA was never in any database. The system can only see people who get arrested. He never gave anyone a reason. For 20 years, a clean reputation was the perfect camouflage. Now Walker had a name. But a name from a family tree is not an arrest. Genetic genealogy is an investigative lead, not courtroom evidence. To charge anyone, police needed a direct sample from McCraney himself. And this is where Chief Walker made the smartest move of the entire investigation. Think about the problem. Walk up to a man like that and call him a suspect? A suspect hires a lawyer. A suspect stops talking. And a direct DNA sample becomes a legal battle. So Walker didn't treat him like a suspect. He invited him down to the station, as a local resident, helping out with an old case. Two men who'd known each other since high school. Just talking. And Walker told him straight, "You're not a suspect. I just need your DNA, so we can rule you out." Rule you out. 3 disarming words. And here's the detail that's almost too much to believe. McCraney didn't come alone. His wife, Jeanette, was sitting right there beside him. And when the request came, she encouraged him to do it. Why wouldn't she? 20 years of marriage, a pastor, a father. She had no reason on earth to suspect anything, no reason to say no. So McCraney agreed, calm as could be. An officer ran a cotton swab along the inside of his cheek. 10 seconds. Done. He walked out of that station a free man, completely unaware that Parabon's family tree had pointed directly at him before he ever walked through the door. The swab went to the lab, and the results came back with zero room for doubt. Coley McCraney's DNA was an exact match to the evidence recovered from J.B. Beasley. The profile that sat unmatched for 20 years. The profile CODIS searched year after year and found nothing. It finally had a name. 20 years of nothing, ended by one cheek swab. If cases like this are the reason you're here, subscribe right now. Because what his wife does next is something no scriptwriter would dare invent. The DNA had a name. Now prosecutors needed a jury to believe it. And McCraney was about to tell a story nobody saw coming. Picture the moment the results hit the table. Investigators sat across from McCraney and laid out the match. His answer was a wall. He didn't know J.B. Beasley, didn't know Tracy Hallett, no connection to either girl, wasn't even in Ozark that night. A flat, total denial. Remember those words. They're about to matter. March 15th, 2019. Almost 20 years to the day. Coley McCraney was arrested. The charges: multiple counts of capital murder and rape. Prosecutors announced they would seek the death penalty. And the shock that hit Dothan and Ozark wasn't about the crime. They'd carried that for decades. The shock was the name. A pastor, a father, a man people waved to on the road, sat near in church, made small talk with about weather and football. In 20 years, across every theory and every suspect, not one person had ever said his name. The trial was set for 2020. Then the pandemic hit and pushed everything back. The families had waited 20 years. Now they waited 3 more. April 2023, Dale County, Alabama. 24 years after the wrong turn, the trial finally opened. 8 days, dozens of witnesses. And in the row reserved for families, Carol Roberts and Cheryl Bergen, side by side. Then, McCraney made a decision that's always a gamble. He took the stand, in his own defense. Because once you're up there, there's no shield. You face direct cross-examination from prosecutors who've prepared for that exact moment. And on that stand, the flat denial of 2019 was gone. Now there was a brand new story. He testified he'd met J.B. months earlier, at a shopping mall in Dothan, that they'd exchanged numbers, stayed in contact, planned to meet up in Ozark that very night. He said his truck broke down, a bad alternator, at a gas station, that he ran into the girls by pure chance, at the payphone, that he and J.B. were together willingly, in the cab of his truck, and that the girls dropped him home before 1 a.m. After that, he said, He had no idea what happened to them. So why the total denial in 2019? His answer: he was scared his wife would find out. Now watch the prosecution go to work. Because everything you've heard in this story was waiting for him. A planned meetup? No texts, no calls, no letters, no witnesses. Not one shred of evidence the two had ever met before that night. Then Marilyn Merritt took the stand. 24 years later, same clear memory. Two lost girls, asking for directions home, nothing more. No date, no meetup, no plans. And the 11:35 phone call sealed it. Tracy told her mother they were on their way home, not heading to meet anyone. Home. Then prosecutors turned to the physical evidence. The mud, the briars, the soaked pant legs. Their case: after the girls left that station, they were taken at gunpoint to that second location. The overgrown ground their clothes described. That's where the assault happened. That's where both girls were shot. Then the car was driven to Herring Avenue and abandoned. A willing encounter, followed by a safe drop-off at home, explains none of that evidence. But the most devastating witness of the entire trial wasn't a detective. It wasn't a forensic expert. It was Jeanette McCraney, his own wife, the same woman who sat beside him at that station and encouraged the swab. She took the stand, and she testified to one simple fact. On the night of July 31st, 1999, her husband went out and did not come home for a stretch of time he could never explain. Not that night. Not in all the years since. Think about what that took. 20 years of trust, a marriage, a family. And when it mattered, she told the truth. April 25th, 2023. The jury went out. The next day, they came back. Guilty. On all 4 counts of capital murder. Including one charge unique to Alabama law. Because he took control of JB's own car during the crime, the law elevated it to capital murder. A provision built to carry the harshest penalty on the books. The sentence: life in prison, without the possibility of parole. Not the death penalty prosecutors wanted. But at 49 years old, McCraney will never walk free again. When the verdict was read, Carol Roberts couldn't speak for several minutes. 24 years. And finally, accountability. Cheryl Bergen heard the word guilty and broke down in tears. She couldn't stop. Alabama's Attorney General, who helped prosecute the case personally, said it plainly. 2 precious girls were lost. Girls who never got to grow up. Never got to become who they were going to be. And he was honest about the limits. No verdict brings full closure. It can't. But it answered the question 2 families carried for 24 years. Today, McCraney sits in a facility in Bessemer, Alabama. He still maintains his innocence. The jury heard his story. The jury heard the evidence. And the jury decided. But this case became bigger than one town. It stands as one of the first in America to prove genetic genealogy could crack a cold case under the hardest possible conditions. No record, no witnesses, nothing but one preserved sample. After this conviction, hundreds of cold cases nationwide came back off the shelf. Families who'd stopped hoping started getting the phone call. J.B. Beasley and Tracy Hollett never made it home. 2 best friends, 1 birthday, 1 wrong turn, and a truth that waited 20 years in an evidence locker for science to catch up. Remember their names. Somewhere right now, another sample is sitting in another evidence locker, waiting for its name. Subscribe and be here the day we cover it. Because these families deserve an audience that never stops watching. I'll see you in the next case.